So I want to start with just by introducing myself. My name is Ryan Oakes. I am responsible for the health and public sector business at Accenture, which for those who are unaware is a large multinational consulting firm. A couple of people, about 800,000 now, working across the globe. And I love this conversation. I'm very excited to spend the next 40 minutes or so having a conversation. Our structure is pretty simple. I'm going to make a couple of remarks just so you know what you're in for. I'm going to make a few remarks to try to frame up the conversation just a bit, and then we'll introduce both our panelists. I'm confident. We'll introduce both our panelists, and we'll get into a few questions that I will ask. And then, frankly, we're going to open the floor up and invite all of you in to the conversation. So with that, let me just start. So as it relates to the subject of AI, I ran a panel here last year on AI, and it was still sort of while it's an old, it's been around for a while, it was still really a newish topic for this forum and this group. And I left the session last year at MSC feeling like I wanted to learn more about what's happening as the year progresses across the globe. So my point of entry coming into this year, we ran a series of interviews and research across the globe. I myself I'm one of those people that the airlines send presents to at holidays because I travel so much. So I am one of those folks who visits with quite a number of different leaders in different countries throughout the year. And what struck me as we ran this research and as we had these interviews is just how wide an array of places on the spectrum that different countries are, different organizations, different governments are. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But what was also really clear to me is that the same 4 or 5 themes continued to come up again and again and again. And so what I thought would be helpful to kick off our conversation today was just to give you a little bit of insight into what we saw, what we heard. So really it's 4 things. One is, I think everybody understands that we're entering a new age of digitization or era of digitization. But the thing that strikes me is AI is frankly everywhere. So I think of this as the moment, I think of this as the moment when iPhones first arrived, right? We didn't have 2 years of research and discussion about whether people liked their iPhones and whether we would introduce them and should we run pilots, should we think about, no, they were ubiquitous and they were suddenly everywhere. And I think most of the folks here would agree there probably hasn't been a session, a panel, or an event in these last 2 days where it somehow hasn't come up. So that's one. 2 is the topic of trust comes up absolutely everywhere, even when we're talking to countries that are bold. And what I mean by bold is countries that are far more focused on the economic development agenda versus maybe attending to risk, workforce issues, things along those lines first. 4 is rooted in value. And what I mean by that is, for the first 6 months since I last left this conference, we've watched client after client, country after country pilot, evaluate, assess, right? So everybody's sort of in that early, like, what is this? How might I use it? What might I do with it? And the last 6 months has really marked a point in time where some countries are still stuck piloting and thinking about it and evaluating and looking at the risks. And other countries are full steam ahead and aggressive and pursuing it from a economic development and a optimistic perspective to start with. And then the one that I'm most passionate about is people. So people come up everywhere. And I think it's the part of the conversation. I love talking about the tech, and we're going to get into that a bit. But really, I want to talk about people today, because as much as we can introduce wonderful new technology, as much as we can change the paradigm for how we operate, how we function, either in the defense space or, frankly, across public health, across climate change, across any number of topics that governments are facing these days. And the conversation about how we bring people along and how we engage our populations as a part of the journey, I think, is incredibly important. So I'm excited to talk about that too. So with that, part of what we're going to zero in on is the topic of sovereign AI, which is really the application of those themes, those big topics for discussion in the context of what does it mean for a particular country or particular organization. And I am deeply, deeply pleased to have two folks with me today, one a returning panel. We sat here a year ago. It's wonderful to have you here. Dr. Strack-Zimmermann, welcome back. Thank you very much. Certainly needs no introduction. And then James Appathurai. Did I get it right? Okay. You ever have a block with it, like you know somebody's name and you just, for some reason, you look at it and you just, I'm sorry, it was your name. So, excellent. So, Dr. Strack-Zimmermann needs no introduction. Chairman of the Committee on Security and Defense for European Parliament. And James is the Deputy Assistant Secretary General for Innovation, Hybrid, and Cloud, or Cyber, sorry, at NATO. And so with that, I would love folks to give a warm round of applause to welcome our panelists. All right, so let's get started with maybe a little bit of a brief, if you could each do a bit of a brief introduction to give folks a little bit of context about your world, your job, your day.
It's much more interesting, but it's really interesting. You have to hear what he's saying because it's really, after 30 minutes, you are definitely more clever than if I talk about the job in the European Parliament. So
that is
no pressure.
I'm the head of innovation and I can't turn on.
I think it's just on.
I'm not sure it's on. Is it on?
Here, you can use it on.
Okay, let's try this one.
We'll share.
Thanks so much. Can you hear me? Yeah. So, yeah, gigantic pressure. Thank you very much for that. Let's focus on AI. I think that's probably where you want to go. And I'd say maybe just a couple of things. One is, of course, when you work at NATO, you're always looking at what we call the red picture, which is what are other people doing? What's happening that could threaten us? How do we have to compete? So I think what's really important for us to understand from a security point of view is a lot of the discussions about whether or not or the extent to which we should embrace AI in the military and all the constraints that we should put on it. If you look at what's actually happening in the field, and especially in Ukraine, that discussion is already over. We're sort of reaching, I think, or starting to begin to reach the end of the GPS era, meaning everything's jammed and at the front. And what we're seeing in Ukraine is when equipment that was relying on GPS gets near the front, it's jammed. Communications are jammed. GPS is jammed. So what's happening? The Ukrainians and the Russians are already fully employing military equipment that uses AI. Optical sensor, it's flying around on its own, targeting. That's the real world, and that will spread everywhere. The second point to make is the Ukrainians are numerically outnumbered in every possible category, but they are using innovation and particular AI to stand on their feet. So what are they doing? They're taking commercially available satellite information, drones, some of which running on AI. They're using natural language processing tools you can buy online to translate unencrypted Russian communications. They're using software you can buy online to track their phones. They're scraping Russian Facebook to get their faces, putting it through facial recognition technology. They've given apps out to everybody to be able to identify a drone going by. They're fusing all of this through using basically a task-oriented chatbot and then pumping that into a battle management system to be able to fight. So AI is integrated into every element of what they're doing to stand on their own feet. So we need to do that because not only are they doing it, but the Russians are doing it too. There is a 2 to 6 week cycle of innovation in Ukraine and in Russia. And it's a Ukrainian cycle, it's a Russian cycle. So one of the important points that I take away from all of this is AI is fully part of this, but second, rapid adoption of artificial intelligence, of new tools, rapid adaptation is also what we need to take on board. Second point I would make is China. So I think we all understand China is investing very heavily in AI. There's 2 points I would make. One is swarming is one of the 3 strategic priorities of the People's Liberation Army. So we need to face the fact that they are fully embracing this technology in a way that we don't necessarily or have not yet done. Second point is the advantage that they have as a country. It's great that OpenAI has all this data and all this super powerful tool, but OpenAI is a private company. In China, they have access to all technologies from any country, any company that they want, civil military fusion as the policy goes, and of course they have access to all data going through all Chinese servers and all servers in China. So their data lake on which they can train AI is orders of magnitude greater than ours as a state. So it's a real difference. So for both of these reasons, the adversarial reasons, as well as the opportunities that AI offers to us, from our perspective, we need to sort of move. We cannot wait to answer every single question, because if you do that, you lose. And losing looks like what Ukraine looks like. Like that's an actual loss. It's not academic. So we need to be able to move. And while ensuring that we have the principles of responsible use in place, and we do, and you can find them on our website, the military is very clear with us. Don't tie our hands behind our back. We have to fight those guys. So let's make sure that we get them the tools, that they can use the tools, that they are well trained in using them. So for us, just to stop, rapid adoption of these AI tools is essential because of the wider context.
Thank you very much. Dr. Strack-Zimmermann, I'll invite you in.
Yes. Yeah. This is. I know, but yours didn't. So I thought I have a problem after 2 days here. It could happen. But anyway, I told you that it's really interesting to hear what you said, because I invited him to come into the Committee of Security and Defense to explain everybody what happens and what's going on. And the question is, I mean, first of all, that the United States and the Chinese are, it's true, number one in AI. Yes, number 1 or 2 or both are number 1. However, Europe is, I think, not even number 3. And this is the truth. But anyway, we have to use it. We have to buy something. We have to look for that soldiers learned. It's definitely, we could see on one hand situations like in the First World War, but on the other hand, a really hybrid modern war. And the bad part of story is that the Russians learned now how a hybrid war, they learned. They are learning by doing. And when they started the full-scale invasion 3 years ago, they didn't. But now they know. And I visited an industry, a secret industry in Kiev, and I talked to really young people, between 20, 30 years, techies and engineers, really tough young people. And they catch drones from Russia, what you said, looking what happens, what is inside, and then answers with a new answer. But the Russians also catch Ukraine. So you could see, it's not a question, oh, let's see, it could happen in a few years. No, it happens really daily. And it's unbelievable, the speed. The thing is that in Europe we have definitely no time. We have to stop discussions. We have to make easy rules. Of course, AI, we need rules, but very simple one, because other one, we are not only in intellectual questions. We are lost any attack, a war, however you name it. And so our job is now that, this AI Act, this is responsible for dual use things, not for military things, but anyway, there are a lot of things, of course, if you optical things are, of course, dual use. So I have not really idea about it. I have a colleague, Svenja Hahn, she has really ideas about it. But anyway, I know that we need new rules very, very simple. And maybe you will say, okay, everybody's talking about easier rules, you have to change something. But now there is really, tomorrow when we will leave this security conference, there's no doubt about it. We have to think in a new way. And there are two reasons. First of all, we could see what happens in Ukraine. And second, we could see how the United States changed their view of being partner of us. However, if we don't help ourselves, nobody will help us. And I think this is not very, it's not nice to say, and it's really sad, but come on. We are 27 countries. We work together even with other countries, of course, with Canada, in NATO, with Great Britain, for example, Norway, name it, European countries. And so I think it's very clear that now we have react. And I hope we could do it, because the good news are, we will see, maybe it's good news, that for the first time we have a commissioner of defense and security. He is responsible for procurement, for common procurement and for space, for the first time in the history of the European Union, because we know that national or security questions are in the hand of the governments, of the national governments. And the second, that our committee, it was for decades subcommittee, no, but anyway, now the parliament said we need a full-fledged committee. And so now we have to really the chance to start. And I think good news are also that in the European Parliament, if you compare it with parliaments in nationals, and I tell you, I know how the function is in national parliament, that it's not a question of only of parties or countries. We are really looking forward working together, because it's very simple. We have to work together. Otherwise, otherwise we have no chance to survive. Maybe it sounds a little bit hard to survive, but I think it's really a question of surviving.
So let's stick on that for just a minute, and then I'm going to ask you a really hard question on agentic AI and do a little definition work. But let's stick on I'm really intrigued by the discussion about sort of a global governance framework or a global AI framework. Do you think there's hope for that, or do you think it's that the mission at hand is just to align Europe or align? What are your thoughts on sort of how do we get to something that creates a set of standards that we can all operate against?
It would really great. We could do it, but I'm not sure if it's not too late, because the Chinese and Russian and how call it, they have their own standards, and they are really not interested in what our standards could be. I think we have to explain people, and I think this is really a job for politicians, because if you are talking in Europe about AI, you could see it years ago. You see in the United States, not only Trump, also Biden before said, AI, it's our future, and come to the United States. We will be the greatest, and however we will be supported, and with really much money. And in Europe, years ago, oh, AI, this is really dangerous. Oh, be careful, and this makes a difference.
You said last year, or you mean yesterday morning? I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. I heard somebody saying that yesterday.
No, but that's the truth, because if there are new things, and every day there is something new, and it makes a difference if you say, come on, we want to go ahead, we want to be the first one. It makes a difference, even you have not the money, because we know that the Americans talking about 500 billion. Okay, we will see. But anyway, they are talking in a positive way, and Europe didn't. And the AI Act was the answer, because they were anxious about the future. And so we need rules. So don't misunderstand me. Anyway, we need rules. But this makes a difference. And so it would be great if we have rules all over, but we have to explain our people at home, because when they hear AI, even elder people, it's a question of, especially in a war, in a fight, who at the end will decide to push the button, or is everything only the machine?
Yeah.
And this is really, it's not easy. I mean, what you said, the AI, it's much better, much faster,
Yeah.
more clever, of course. But there are many people are anxious that you will have a war, and we have no chance to stop it because the machine will going on.
Well, so let's move into that then. So semi-autonomous, fully autonomous, the concept of agent-based. Let's talk about that a little bit more. So maybe do a minute of sort of laying the groundwork, but I'd love to get your thoughts on how do we balance that human in the loop, and what are some of the strategies that we need to put in place?
Absolutely. So these are really fundamental questions which everyone has to deal with. So thanks for the opportunity. Let me I know we're in a mutual admiration society, but just take a moment to say the European Parliament is not always reputed for being practical and serious and focused on outcomes. But isn't it reassuring that there's a chair of a security committee like that? I've been around long enough to know it wasn't always the case, so we should be very happy. So I think this question of standards and is really important. So first point is global treaty, obviously not possible. Let's not even think about it. And second, it's not enforceable. You can change code over the air like your Tesla, so we can't verify. So I don't think I would even have confidence in a treaty, even if it existed. However, from our point of view, I think there are three practical reasons why we are actually, even from a military sense and defense sense, we believe that having principles and some guardrails are important for three reasons. One is companies that we are interested in acquiring this technology from want to know how it's going to be used. So for us to buy it, they have to be comfortable with how it's going to be used. So I've had this experience where they say, yeah, okay, what are you going to do with it? And then I say, go on the website. These are the principles we have agreed. It is baked into the software, and we have tools in place to test the software to make sure that it does that. Then they sell it to us, so we get it. Point one. Point two, the military wants to know that when they press the button, it's going to do what they want it to do, that it is in line with their values, or they're not going to use it. If it's going to go like all crazy, they don't want it. So for it to be employed, baking these values, principles, guardrails into the technology is essential. Third reason, which is a bit more macro, but I think it's also important, you can run ahead with development and not worry about guardrails. But at a certain stage, if you look at nuclear power, Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island set back nuclear power by 25 years. When there's a major incident, it sets back everything. And so if you don't build in enough guardrails to prevent the big blowback moment, then actually you haven't done even the development of the technology any favors. So for all three reasons, I think these things are valuable for us. But then you come to the question of control. And of course, we debate this all the time. And, everyone talks about generative AI. You're talking about agentic, which is really, really important, right? And you have probably one of the smartest people I ever met in this room here, Brian, who can talk much more authoritatively on this subject than I can. But in essence, different NATO countries have different views on where in the loop or on the loop a human being has to be. Is it the case that you have sufficient control if you have told a drone, a Harpy drone, something that loiters, for example, okay, this is the target, go fly around for 48 hours. If you see it, you can hit it. If you don't, you come back. Is that sufficient human in the loop, or do you actually have to have someone who sees it and presses? I think to be blunt, the direction of travel is we're going to be moving away from there has to be a human that approves hitting it. And we've had this experience with all kinds of other systems, right? You cannot do air defense anymore with somebody sitting there pressing the button every single time. It's coming at you super fast with 1,000 systems. They're trying to spoof you. They're trying to trick you. They're using all of these tools against you at a speed no human being can possibly respond to. So we've already accepted that our air defense is going to be automatic. So if you put in the guardrails at the beginning and let it go, and you have confidence in the software that it's going to work, that's okay. And I think, just to close, I think we also have to recognize that the direction of travel for improved technology in the military has been, in general, and there are exceptions when people don't want to use it, towards fewer civilian casualties. I mean, to hit something in World War II, you had to drop 3,000 bombs to hit one factory. It eradicated cities. 20 years ago, you could put a missile through a window because you had this technology. Now, there are sniper scopes where it will not pull the trigger unless the AI in the scope recognizes the face of the person you were authorized to hit. You cannot hit a civilian who is not the one, you cannot hit anyone but the target because the gun won't let you do it. So you can definitely make a case that this technology, if used correctly, will actually reduce civilian casualties, improve targeting, improve the work of the soldier, or at least that's what we are hoping.
There you go.
It's really interesting. I could really turn on. No, because I think it's really to explain people what happens. And we could see when Israelis killed in the Hezbollah, Hamas, really this guy and not the other one. And you have to understand what happens there. And so that, yes, it's really...
Yeah. So I want to do one more question with just the three of us having a love fest.
I'm going to compliment you in a second.
And then, thank you. That was really me fishing for attention. No, we'll do one more question that is the three of us, and then I just fair warning, we'll invite folks in for about 10 minutes if there are questions from the group. I promised that we would talk about the humans, right? Because somewhere in here, while this technology is moving very, very, very quickly. Oh, I thought she was leaving. I was like, no, that's fine.
I hate frozen conflicts and frozen body.
I thought you would want to talk about humans. It's fine. To me, one of the most intriguing challenges as the technology can hurtle along at this breakneck speed, and it's how do we bring people along, and you could take that multiple ways. We can talk about the general population. That's not what I'm intending. I'm thinking about just how do we bring defense forces, how do we bring the enterprise along, and it's a hard question, but I'd be curious to get brief thoughts from each of you on that before I open the floor up.
You mean in the brain of people?
Yeah, it's
okay. You could start very early because when a baby is born, the first thing what the baby will see coming on Earth, it's not the eye of the mother, it's the iPhone from the father. So they I'm sure, to see, 100%. So it's, wow, it's my father. No, it's just a new Apple. So what I'm talking about is that I could see is if you sit together with really children 4, 5, 6 years old, or when I'm together with my eldest grandchild, she's 10 years old. She's absolutely, everything. It's so clear, easygoing. So they are interested in, on the one hand. On the other hand, they just want that the function is okay. Not interested in how. I'm such a type, Everything has to be okay, and it's not my cup of tea. How? But anyway, you have to start very early. I just came from a meeting where I have to talk in a podcast to 16, 17 years old young boys, girls, women, men, because they were anxious about war. They were really anxious what could happen in Europe, and so you have to explain them, especially in military questions, that this high-tech is a huge chance to save lives. So war will never come. And you have to change also, not only, of course, not military questions, you have to change the lessons in school. The problem is, if you see the shidal in school, yeah, you know what they are learning. I mean, everything is very important. But I think I would prefer two things. History, to realize what happens 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, to understand what happens now, first of all. And the second, to make it sure that young girls and boys are interested in technique. I mean, this is really so how could I say? You have to find a way to explain young human being what it happens and what would be makes a difference in the future. Yeah. And we have to start in kindergarten and we have to start in school and not the old-fashioned tralala. It's nice, and you could, as grandmother, I could tell a lot of nice stories, and everybody will laughing about or not. Or wow, it's tall, it's fine. But anyway, you know, you have to change everything from the first moment when life starts to save life.
Beautifully put. Last comments before we open the floor?
Sure. I'll be a little bit more prosaic because I can't top that. In my experience, I think I would say maybe a couple of things. One is senior decision makers need to actually carve out regular time to understand this. Because right now we don't have that situation. So the North Atlantic Council, for example, these are all very smart people. These are most senior diplomats. Like we had M, like the James Bond M, you know, like that's the level.
It's the best actor.
Yeah, no,
it's a great job.
It's a great job, but this was the person who was M, who then came to NATO, just to show you the quality. But basically, you know, 4 times a year, they get a morning to focus on this. So that's not enough. They don't understand it at all, and I can't expect them to understand it. So senior leaders need to take the time on a regular basis to make this part of their life. And then that will then cascade down into decisions. Second thing we need to do is very much change the way in which governments, and in particular militaries, acquire these technologies. Right now, the way we acquire everything is like we're acquiring a tank or an F-35. Exquisite product, has to succeed from the first moment, has to succeed in any environment. You take ages to determine what the requirements are. You take ages to go through the 47 steps to be able to buy it. Then actually all the money is already programmed for buying tanks, so you don't have discretionary funding when you need it to be able to acquire a new technology. And also when young people, or it's usually young people, when young companies come to test technology to show it off, when you're testing like a rifle or another piece of hardware, the military is testing, does it work or does it not work? Right here on my range. If it doesn't work, you're out. But it doesn't work that way with AI. It's not going to work the first time. The point is it has to iterate. It has to get better. You need 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You need contact, and then eventually it gets good. That's how it works. But we are not built for that. So we are, just to make a pitch, at the summit at The Hague in June, we will adopt a rapid adoption action plan, rapid adoption of innovative technologies with a whole host of steps to change this mindset. And change the procedures so that we all NATO countries can actually acquire software, AI, and other innovative technologies at the speed of relevance, meaning not 14 years, but if possible, 6 months.
Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna open the floor now. We've got time for a couple of questions, probably 2. Right here. I think we've got mics so that folks can hear you, or we had. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jennifer Cassidy. I am a lecturer at Oxford University on AI and diplomacy. I was a diplomat for a number of years before I realized I wasn't a very good one, so I saw myself out. But I just really wanted to build on the point of the training and the development. And I really think this is a key aspect that both academics and be it the EU, NATO, and other regional bodies or multilateral bodies, we need to come together. And I've said this to my department a number of times, but we're very, very enclosed. Like Oxford is doing a phenomenal work in this area. The Oxford Internet Institute, along with our department, but it's just not getting out there. And when we had the third wave with social media, we were knocking on the doors of foreign ministries, trying to teach them and trying to, and they closing the door. Thankfully, it opened, and now they're becoming more receptive to AI, but bridging this partnership. So I think there is a lack of willingness on both the university side and the multilateral bodies. But I think if we could bring this partnership together, I think it could be,
It was not a question, but anyway, I want to add it. In Germany, for example, it's not allowed. There's a rule that you have, that universities are not allowed to research in military questions. I mean, even in dual use. This is really crazy. But, because it's not old-fashioned, it's crazy. So, and I hope we could change it. But there are still universities or chair of universities say, no, don't talk about all this stuff, it's dangerous, it's terrible. And this is really the beginning of the end. Because young people coming to university, and they have to learn to think in a new way, and not in an old-fashioned way like we did.
Fantastic. Over in the corner.
Yes, thank you. I have one question right now. I'm the German ambassador in Brazil. Before that, I was serving in NATO. So my question is, the BRICS countries have as part of their program this particular year during the Brazilian presidency that they want to work on AI and on AI regulation. So my question is, if these countries who are in the BRICS, who are, let's put it mildly, our competitors, they are looking towards this regulation, which they then, of course, will introduce into broader circles. Is that something we need to be concerned about, that we also need to get our act together when it comes to regulation? Or do we believe talking to them would be the better approach? Because the BRICS, of course, is also China.
So what she kindly didn't say was she was my boss. I just want to point that out. So I think from my perspective anyway, it's actually quite important that we have our own, and that engaging is great if we can do it. I think actually if there's one area where we could have, I think, a substantial discussion with China, it's on AI and its employment in the military. There, I think there might actually be a substance. But more, the point I really wanted to make was what we have seen when it comes to other tech sectors is China in particular, but also that community engages in the bodies which set regulations, either in the UN system or the International Telecommunications Union, in ways which favor their technologies. And as they favor their technologies, if that becomes the standard in those bodies, then the rest of the world will acquire those technologies because those are the ones that meet that standard. As a result, they get all kinds of tech dominance. And when it comes to AI, as it did with 5G, there are major security implications for that. So having our own set and then fighting for them in those regulatory bodies and political bodies is super important because it cascades down into sales and security, etc.
Excellent. Well, I know we rotate in and out quite quickly, so apologies. We don't have time for more questions. What a privilege to have this conversation today with the two of you. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
I wish everybody a fantastic remainder to your day. Please, a round of applause for everyone.